I will call this meeting to order. This is a special board meeting of the Jackson County Library District to mostly go through budget stuff. We have the budget committee meeting with us. Let's start with a roll call.
Susan Kiefer.
Present.
Patty Jensen.
Present.
Kevin Keating.
Not present.
Marta Teranzi.
Here.
Marissa Shepherd.
Also not. And then the land acknowledgement. Jackson County Library Services acknowledges that its libraries are located within the traditional lands of the Shasta, Takelma, and Lagawa people, whose descendants are now identified as members of the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians and Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde, as well as the Cow Creek and of Umpqua Tribe of Indians and the Modoc Nation, who were forced to relocate to Oklahoma. We take this moment to recognize the indigenous peoples whose traditional lands are where residents of Jackson County live today. JCLS is committed to fostering understanding, deep respect, and honor for indigenous people, and we encourage you to learn more about the land you reside on. For more information, go to jcls.org/land. And on the agenda that we have for today, we need to add one item at the very end to set a date for an executive session to review the investigation that is coming back from HR Answers. I don't think, because this is a special meeting, we have to approve that. So, but I think we should go around the room and introduce ourselves so that everybody knows the budget committee people here and all the rest of the folks that are sitting at the table. Would you like to start, Patty?
I'd be delighted, thank you. Hi, I'm Patty Jensen.
Hi, I'm Doug Townsend. Dave Canner.
Alicia Van Riggs.
And in our virtual waiting room, we have Marta, who's a board member, and there's another budget committee person I saw on there that isn't in the pic. Oh yeah, there he is. Hi, Dave.
Yeah, hello. David Matthew.
All right.
Can the budget committee folks who are in the room repeat their names again into the microphone?
These microphones are what allow them to hear you. So maybe you folks would reintroduce yourselves so they can hear you.
My name is Alicia Van Riggs.
I'm Dave Canner.
All right.
Thank you. Much better.
Whoa. Oh, Kevin's going to join by Zoom. All right. So, given this is our work session where we do a preliminary look at our budget process and all the work that goes on behind the scenes, I will turn this over to Heather and let her explain all this bunch of numbers to us.
Thanks, Susan. Well, welcome. Thank you for being here for the Jackson County Library District Budget Committee work session. We will be reviewing the budget process for the upcoming fiscal year 26-27. And you already introduced yourself, but I did want to welcome our new members, Alicia Van Riggs and Dave Canner. This is their first time joining us, so welcome. And even though this is technically now a special board meeting, we're going to be operating as it's still a work session under those rules. That's how it was designed. And part of that is a reminder that this is not an official committee meeting. This is just a work session. And so we abide by Oregon local budget law, and Oregon budget law has some very specific rules about what we're allowed to do and what we're not allowed to do in this work session. And so just as a reminder, the budget committee may not deliberate on the budget document as a body before the first noticed meeting. And that first noticed meeting is May 6th this year. Topics that are off limits during today's meeting are specific estimates or appropriation amounts associated with any fund or line item, resource, or requirement. So no numbers. The question of whether to fund specific programs or expenditures, and the question of whether to impose any tax levy or the amount of any levy. Okay, so we'll discuss the budget process overview. So the budget committee dues, what you're supposed to do is review the budget both prior to the first meeting and publicly at the meeting. And you'll receive your draft on or around April 29th. So you'll have sufficient time to review it before that meeting on the 6th. You'll hear the budget message, which we'll discuss, but will also be in the document that you receive. You'll hear and consider any public comment, if there are any. And then you'll approve the budget, and you'll approve the maximum amount of the property taxes. Budget committee don't. So you can't do these things. You can't act independently outside of a committee meeting. You can't deliberate on the budget document before the first meeting. You can't discuss anything related to the budget process outside the public meeting. You cannot set staffing levels, salaries, benefits, or contract terms. You can't decide whether a service or program should be provided, and you cannot make policy. Okay, what is a budget? If you don't know already, definitions. It's a financial plan. It controls the district's spending authority, so we can't spend anything that's not in the budget. It's a financial accountability tool, and it's a vehicle for obtaining public opinion. The purpose of the budget and the budgeting process, well, first of all, it's required by state law. It provides a plan for staff. It's a communication tool, and it's cost effective.
You can go to the district page and get this one.
Okay. Oh, you're okay. Next slide. Okay, so who's involved in the budgeting process? The budget committee, which is all of you, budget officer, which is myself, the library director, which right now is Frank Phillips, our administrative team, many are here today, our area branch managers, our department heads, and the public. Who's on the budgeting committee? The governing body, which is the board, and then an equal number of appointed electors. So 5 and 5, 10 members total, and all members have the same authority. The appointed electors must be registered voters in the district. They cannot be officers, agents, or employees of the district, and they're appointed for staggered 3-year terms. Okay, what to expect of me, your budget officer. I must provide you with clear budget goals, objectives, and timelines, provide a budget documentation for meetings, keep the level of discussion at a high level, and communicate comments and concerns to appropriate personnel for budget adjustments. Okay, there's 4 phases of the budget process. The first phase is to propose the budget. That's the phase that we're in right now. Designate a budget officer, which the board has already done. I prepare the budget and the budget calendar, and then hold the committee work session, which is where we're at right now. So in here, it's hard to see because we have you on the people on the screen covering the end part, but I think we can still get by. But this is the budget process diagram. And you can see where the blue dot is, that's where we are right now. So we are very much in the beginning. We are working on putting the budget together for you all for the May 6th meeting. And then there's lots of things. Our process is fairly simple. Typically it kind of goes straight through that middle line. We'll go through our budget committee meeting, and then it goes to the board to be adopted. We publish it, we submit to the county, and go through all the steps necessary to have it documented in all the right places. Okay, step 2 is to approve the budget, and we will publish a notice of the budget committee meeting in the Rogue Valley Times. And the budget committee meets to receive the budget message and the document and hear any public comments. So that is a public meeting. There's potential for people to be there to ask questions or voice concerns. And then the budget committee approves the budget. Sure.
Since this is my first time,
Uh-huh.
does the budget committee approval need to be unanimous?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, just majority. Okay, step 3 is to adopt the budget. It's the responsibility of the governing body or the board to formally adopt the budget. And then that adopted budget is filed with the county assessors and clerk's offices. Okay, and then the final step is actually after the budget adoption. We can do appropriation transfers or supplemental budgets if they're necessary. Local budget law does not contemplate that the budget committee is involved in the budget resolutions or supplemental budgets that happen after the fact. And the budget committee members are welcome to attend the meetings and voice opinions about proposed changes, which those only become public meetings if it's more than a 10% amount over budget that needs to be addressed, or a supplemental budget. Yeah.
We haven't done very many of those in our 12-year history.
10%, it would have to be something very significant to affect the budget. Okay, so now we're looking at our current year 26, 27. So the funds that we budget for are the general fund, which is our operating fund. That's the biggest fund. We also budget for the miscellaneous grants fund, which is fairly small. These are gifts and grants, mostly coming from the foundation and friends groups. Most of our grants go through the foundation, so those would be budgeted there. And then we have a capital improvement fund, and technically this is just a reserve fund. It's not a separate legal fund that we set aside for planned improvements to the facilities. And then the budget has 4 function areas. The first one is public services. This is our community facing and branch services. The next one is support services, and that includes IT, technical services, collection management, and facilities. And we have our community engagement area, which is Spanish engagement, marketing, outreach, and tech ed. And then we have administrative services, so library administration, the foundation, HR, and finance. And then this is just a very simplified org chart. The top is the director, and then you have your administrative team, and then after that are department heads. No names on this one, just to give you an idea of how we're structured.
What's the?
So I have a question. What's the hidden green box?
Oh,
on
that one says foundation director. Sorry,
Thank you.
Jenny. That one.
Can we put the pictures at the bottom? No.
I don't know if we can get that. Can you move them to the bottom?
We've tried it.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's not a lot more detail to look at. So, okay. So this is looking at our 25-26 general fund budgeted expenses in the pie chart. And this total includes our contingency and our transfers amount. And so sometimes we look at things with that in it and sometimes without it, because contingency doesn't always get used. So this one includes that. And that contingency there, that 3%, that represented $500,000 last year. And then materials and services at 31% and personnel at 65%. Capital outlay was not expended out of the operating fund last year. It came out of our capital improvement fund. Oh, and then one more, the contingency this year we'll be looking at, we'll need to consider potential union costs that we are unaware of at this point, but we'll need to make sure we consider that as we budget for that this year.
I have a question. And will a search for a director be part of the contingency?
So that's a discussion that we'll have with the finance committee to discuss if we know how much that will be, and if we don't know, I mean, we know that's going to happen, so we most likely will budget an amount for it and not pull it out of contingency.
It'll cost something regardless of how we do it. So it'll be in the budget somewhere.
Yeah, contingency is more used for unexpected things, so things we don't know or we don't have a way to identify or value.
Okay.
So if we do have an idea of what it will be, then we would budget for
I
it.
was just thinking because the union's the first time, and then in the recent years, it's the first time for a director.
Right.
So
First year, but we don't know what it will involve at this point. So.
We don't really know any of the changes. We don't know much about what effect the union's going to have on our budget yet. Do we?
No, we have the first meeting, I believe, is the 7th of April. So at this point, we don't have any information on any of it.
New things for all of us.
Okay, so this chart shows our personnel costs as a percentage of the operating budget without contingency and transfers in. It's now been 3 years since the hours expansion that was part of our strategic plan. And you can see that the prior year increased significantly to 68%. In alignment with our strategic plan, we are currently evaluating our branch hours and FTEs to make sure that we are right-sized in both areas. The goal is to get closer to 66% of operating budget. And so you can't see that, sorry, up on the screen, but that last column was fiscal year 26. It was 68% and 147 FTEs.
Mhm.
So our projections for 26, 27, as we just discussed, we'll be looking at personnel services, analyzing our operating hours, FTEs. We'll have to consider a COLA increase. And last I heard, we think that'll be around 2.5%, but we're not sure yet on that. And then we'll look at step increases, and our step increases are 1.5% per step. So we will look at what we can fit in to the budget. Our health insurance cost is currently estimated at a 12% increase, and we are currently negotiating that. That's very high for us. We typically see like a 1 or 2%. So we don't know what we can do there yet. So I'm currently assuming 12, hoping for the best. So contracted services, some of the preliminary information we have, our facilities and maintenance and landscaping contracts are estimated at a 7.5% increase overall. We had a 15% increase last year. Our Jackson County maintenance contract is coming in at a 3% increase. And just to know, our landscaping services are now on a separate contract with Prolon, and they used to be included with Jackson County. Custodial services contract, we're actually expecting a slight decrease at 1%. Last year we had a 4.5% increase, and that the decrease is because we have reduced some of our services with Pathways. Our security contract is coming, or we're estimating, sorry, at 3% increase from Northwest Defense. Okay, and this
Interrupt.
Yeah.
I've got a question.
Sure.
You showed a sizable increase there in personnel costs. Then you talked a little bit about the step increases. My question is, are step increases automatic or are they merit-based?
They're not automatic, so it's part of the budgeting process. They would have to get approved by the board, and they are not merit-based. They're across the board for everybody gets the same amount. And that will be affected by union as well. Depends on what happens with that.
Our salary increases from the beginning have been not merit-based. That was advice we got from HR Answers, which is the personnel consulting firm that works with the Special Districts Association of Oregon. And we get a lot of advice from them. And that's why we are in doing it this way.
And just to be clear, that chart that I was showing, that fiscal year 26, that was last year. That's not what we're budgeting this year. So not an anticipated increase this year. But we have to look at all of those parts to determine how much budget will be. Okay, so I'm gonna swing it. So looking at revenues, our projections has historically been right around 4% of an increase in assessed property value. We perform an internal analysis as well as compared to the county's estimate of property value assessment in their budget to come up with an amount that we feel comfortable with for forecasting tax revenue. We also forecast at a 94% collection rate. Okay, and so spending priorities, we're in an unusual year this year. Our strategic plan ends in June 2026. We've had some turmoil around, and so we are still working on developing our strategic roadmap, which will be our bridge to the next strategic plan. And so the majority of our plan for fiscal year 26-27 is to operate on a status quo, meaning keep the doors open, keep things moving, no new big initiatives, just
we'll keep
at
the
it.
doors more than open,
but yeah,
but not a lot of big new things.
Right. Okay, so our spending will align with the direction that the strategic roadmap is taking, which will include continued branding and marketing, investing in our collection, which will involve maintaining our physical collection and supporting the transition we just did to our own Overdrive Libby platform. We'll have technology investments that include improving cybersecurity posture, doing some transitioning to the cloud, asset management software, supporting open source ILS and Koha, and potentially having some AI access for some of our staff. And then access and accessibility. We have plans to improve some seating and meeting room tables, and some support for required website ADA enhancements. And then for capital improvements, we really just need to keep up with our aging buildings, and that will include some flooring replacements in Ashland and White City, a roof replacement in Phoenix, roof recoating in Medford, and some exterior painting in Talent and Shady Cove. Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
No?
Another question.
Sure.
That's fine. That's why you're here.
Yeah.
You mentioned IT transitioning more to the cloud.
Uh-huh.
I'm curious, are you talking servers in the cloud now?
So
rather than making
specifically,
investment, or what are you transitioning?
So specifically, I think this relates to it's actually our accounting software is server based right now, and we have to maintain those servers in house, which is costly, and they're needing an upgrade. And so instead of doing that, we're transitioning to a cloud based service so that we don't have to continue doing that, which is actually the way most things are moving now, and they're safer, and the software is updated more frequently, I would say, by the providers.
And somebody else does.
And somebody
which
else
is
does
the
it,
really
yes.
nice part.
You're outsourcing it then.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's the same company. It's just it's now the way they're moving. And so they tend to support their cloud-based services a little bit better than the desktop version. So yeah. And I don't know if there's more. I mean, Kelly's here, but I don't know if there's other software, but I know that was one of the big ones this year.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. So as of right now, you're going to put up that other sheet. That's our general plan for 26-27. We did provide you with this 5-year forecast sheet that shows, again, we can't talk about current year numbers, and we're still putting those together, but this is projections based off of our last year's budget and where we were at year to date in December 2025. And so it kind of gives you a big picture of where we're headed and what our budget goals are to where we need to be for the next fiscal year.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Please. On the very first line, and perhaps I just simply don't understand, how we're dropping almost 500,000 on projected for this year and then 27, 28.
Are you looking at salaries and wages, or what do you like? What line are you looking at?
It says, beginning fund balance,
I'm sorry. Okay.
7,514,058.
Yep.
And then for 26, 27, it drops by about 500,000.
So if you look at the very bottom for budgeted 25, 26, you see that net change of negative 442,000. It's like about 1, 2, 3. It's the fourth line up from the.
Oh, I see.
So we budgeted for that negative last year because we had reserve funds that we could use. And so that's just the difference between beginning fund and ending fund. So if you look at the very bottom, that 7,071,000, that's the ending projected fund balance for 25, 26.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Because our income mostly arrives in November when property taxes get paid, or to get paid in October. So we have to get through the first 4 months of our fiscal year from July through October with last year's money, because this year's money doesn't come right away.
So that's a good segue into the explanation of this worksheet in general. At the very bottom, you see where it says policy. It says 4 months of operating expenditures. So that's our policy is to hold in reserves enough to cover 4 months of operating expenditures. And so part of this 5-year forecast is looking to make sure as we go each year that we are maintaining that and making sure we have a sufficient amount in reserves for that policy. So that very bottom line that says overage or deficiency, that's showing how far over that requirement we are. So on this projection on the 26, 27 line, it's projecting that we would be more than sufficient with 1.185 million more than what we would require to hold in reserve. The net change line is the net budget for that year. So that's income less expenses. That's where we at. So that the goal is to present a balanced budget. So that should be near zero, if at the lowest.
I have a question.
Sure.
It's probably not all that relevant to this meeting, but up under revenues, under budgeted for 25, 26, we have transfer in from other funds, and then in parentheses, that's interest, and it's $1,060,000. And every other year, we're looking at something much less than that. And I was just curious as to where we got all that interest from.
Sure. I'm going to get very accountancy for a minute and try to explain this. So we earn interest on our money in the bank, right? So we get all those property taxes that goes into our local government interest pool account, an LGIP account, and we earn. And so we allocate that amongst the funds. So some of it goes to general fund, some of it goes to capital improvement, and some of it to the grants fund. So we do that. We don't have to leave it there. We can take that. We can use that money for operating. And it hadn't been done. It had been allocated over the years, but we hadn't pulled it back and used it, and we needed it last year. And so it was an opportunity to say, let's bring it back into the operating fund now because we need it. And so it was making up several prior years. And so going forward, that amount that we transfer out over the years, about $200,000. So at the end of the year, I'll transfer it back into operating. If we don't need it, we don't have to do that, but there's really no purpose in it sitting in those other funds unless we have a reason to use it out of those funds.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So how does that differ from the interest income line item?
So interest income is that amount that's allocated to the general fund. So basically the total interest would be let's look at 26, 27. We have 348,000 budgeted there. It would be that plus the 208 transferred back in. That would be the total interest that we receive on that LGIP account. The 208 is what we transferred out to the other funds during the year, and we're bringing it back into the operating fund. So that 348 is it's like the piece that's allocated directly to the operating fund. That makes sense.
That's true. I need to see it right.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a whole spreadsheet that goes, but basically the total interest received is the total of those two numbers.
Okay, I had another question, if
Sure.
I may. Is there a seasonality to some of your expenditures? In other words, some of your actuals through December are way, way below budget. And I'm just wondering if that's because those expenses typically occur in the second half of the fiscal year.
Somewhat. Most of the things that we know, like we have prepaid expenses, right? So things we get charged for annually, subscriptions and things. I do allocate those across the 12 months equally, so that wouldn't be accounted for here. Can you tell me which one in particular you're looking at? Maybe I can.
Oh,
Maybe some materials.
yeah, I think I probably should have had an example.
That's okay.
Supplies is less than 50%.
Yeah.
Mine
Yeah,
60, 50.
professional development.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, professional development was just a little behind, and there is some seasonality to that because there's conferences that happen later in the year. So,
that's what I was wondering. But that's kind of a small example. I think supplies was the one that jumped out at me. I'm not seeing it. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
You're through December, you'd spent only a third of your budget. So I'm wondering, okay, is this because you place a big supply order at the end of the fiscal year for the following fiscal year, or how does it work?
So I would say technically, no, there is no real seasonality to that. I think what happens is people tend to stock up getting close to the end of the budget year, and then they don't need to buy again for a little while. So it's more of just habits. I think that supplies may have been over budgeted a little bit on that one. So in particular, that's just, something we're looking at this year.
And
Yeah.
for the district staff and board, you've done a great job of not needing legal services this year.
So again, this is just to show you kind of the process, I guess, of like how we are approaching as we budget. I have a very detailed spreadsheet that we, take all the departmental information in and pull it together into a summary. But then it feeds into this one that shows me the 5 years out. So it's super important to make sure that we're not only budgeting for a balanced budget in the current year, but that it's going to work out going forward. So yeah, I just thought it was a good view of
The line item for consultants fees, which is the fourth one down under materials and services, is much higher projected for 26, 27 than any of the other years. What do we know that? Oh, that's where you're
this guy over there.
Ah,
So he's not in salaries and wages because he's an independent
right,
contractor.
because
So
he's an independent contractor. That
Yep.
makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I knew there was a reason. I just couldn't think what it was.
yeah, again, these aren't specific numbers, but there were a few things that we knew affected this. So I updated big picture things that I knew we could apply in 26, 27.
Well, there are a few unusual things happening.
Yes. Do we have any questions from anybody on? Oh, sorry. Alicia, go ahead.
I'll wait until to make sure that
Go ahead.
okay. I just had a question. Can you help me understand the percentages in the assumption column? Is that
Yeah, they're very generalized. They're percentages, percent increases that we anticipate going forward. Yeah.
thank you.
Except is the payroll tax and fringe is a percentage of salary though. So that's the only one that's different.
I have one other question.
Sure.
Kind of minor, but the parking revenue, is that the cities or is that the libraries?
So yeah, we have to pay that parking permits. That's what it's not the city, it's a private owner.
Oh, so they get all the revenue.
Um,
Oh,
yeah, we don't get a piece of that. We in fact have to pay for our own staff parking to be able to park there. So that's the fee we pay is for our parking, and then we don't get any piece of that.
We keep trying to get that parking lot out here away from the city and get them to deed it to the libraries. And so far, they're resisting. But see, we have staff at most of the library branches have free parking. So we pay for parking so as not to penalize the people that work in Metro. Because
I don't recall that parking lot being owned by the city when we built this.
but
building.
it's all the parking is run by Mural, which is Medford Urban Renewal
Renewal.
Association.
Oh.
And we would love to have,
You know,
but so
I'll go back in time, Victoria.
we've been working on them for a while. Yeah. And so far without much success. Although they did increase the parking time around the city now from an hour to 2 hours, which might reduce their revenue a bit because I would imagine there'll be fewer parking fines. Anyway,
Marta had a question.
Marta.
Yes, thank you. If you scroll down to the telecom line, it says phone and LD. I'm guessing LD is a long distance.
Long distance.
Is this
That's
still a
just
relevant label?
it's just an old GL code label. Yeah. That should be going slowly away, I would imagine.
Gotcha. Just checking.
Yep.
I'm guessing the same thing with copier. Do we lease the copiers from somebody like Pacific Office Automation or
We do lease our copiers. It's not Pacific Office, but yeah, from another entity. Mhm.
Gotcha. Thank you. I have a question, another one. Have we been notified by any of our utility providers, like gas, electricity, about any increases in costs? I know that
That's-
residential users may be facing some increases, and I'm curious whether we as an institutional user will be seeing that.
I haven't received a formal notice of it. I anticipate we would at least receive the same as the residential. And I have budgeted already accordingly. That's one area I've been working on because we already saw a significant increase last year as well. So,
If I may, I think they just raised it 5% as of April 1st
that was for
at Pacific Power.
4.1 is what I saw in the news this morning.
Okay.
So, yeah, there's definitely a plan to account for that in this year's budget as well. So, along with gas and garbage and everything else, everything has been going up. So
Everything's going up.
Yeah.
I don't have it. So, and just a couple of little things. I mean, in the early phases of this, Heather was talking about the fact that the committee gets to consider the tax levy rate, but a couple of years ago we kicked ours up to the max that were statutorily permitted. So unless we go out for an increase in that, which would have to be voted on by the public, and I would imagine we have a rather small chance of having one of those. But so the only thing we would consider would be a decrease of our levy, and I don't think Heather's going to recommend that.
I don't recommend that this year. Okay, any other questions on the 5-year projection?
This is your big chance to ask questions, so don't be shy.
Oh, they get another chance on May 6th too.
Well, there is that.
One last
Yes.
question. On the hotspots, I see a line item that is for internal use, so for our teams out in the field conducting outreach. Is that correct?
Yeah, this is the remainder of what we keep for those services. Yeah, it's not the we no longer have the program that we had
Thank you.
before. Sorry. I don't have a lot of details on that, but I know it's just the bare minimum of what we need.
Gotcha. Thanks.
I had one question about elections. Can you help me understand what the every other year is for that?
Yeah, so we get charged for by the county for every other for budget line election cycles. So it's not an every year thing.
The board members are elected to a 4-year term, but the election dates are staggered. So we elect 2 budget members 1 year, and then 2 years later we elect 3 board meetings.
And so the cost to the library is the cost for
the county
the county doing the election.
Yeah, our fee for the election.
Okay, thank you.
No free lunch.
Yeah, no.
But yeah.
Okay, so right now I'm just looking at our schedule. So we had the work session today. The first committee meeting is on May 6th. If we need to have a second meeting because we don't get approved on the first one, we're anticipating that will be on May 14th. And then the budget hearing is currently scheduled for the board meeting on June 17th. However, we are talking about potentially moving that up to the May 20th board meeting if everything's ready to go ahead and close that loop at that meeting.
I think you said May 14th, but on the sheet it says 13th.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just, I don't want anybody to get
On what sheet? On the calendar?
on the agenda.
Oh, on the agenda. Okay. Do you have?
I think the 13th is a Wednesday, so
That is correct.
I think the 13th is correct.
And would it be another 3:30 or a 4 p.m.?
Probably 3:30.
Turn your mic on, please.
I turned it off. It looks like 3:30.
Sounds
And
good.
we have to notice that meeting and it's not noticed. So
Excuse me.
we would want to make sure that that worked with schedules. But most likely it would be the 13th. Apologies for that.
For the backup. The 6th works for me wonderfully. The 13th, I would have to dial in, but I will make myself available.
Okay. Well, let's hope that we're done after the 6th, and then so that's just kind of a contingent meeting.
And I'm still a big fan of moving it to May 20th, just to keep us moving expeditiously, because June 17th, I'm teaching in Salem.
Okay. Yeah, if all goes well, I don't see a problem with that. We were wondering why it got pushed out to June, and we were just following previous year's calendars, but I don't see any reason that it needs to wait that long. So,
All right, then. That would be good.
okay. That is all I have. If you want to go skip past this one and then to the next one, there are resources that if you have further questions on your roles and responsibilities, you can go to the Oregon Budget Law website. And there's a manual. There's all kinds of reading you can do if you want more detail than what I gave today.
So is that list available
We can send it out.
anywhere
Sure.
that these folks
Mhm.
can find it if they want more information?
I think some of them were sent at in prep of the very first. Because I did
You've already
go
seen
to some of these websites.
Right. Yeah. I'm sure you've all seen bits and pieces of these at least, but we'll send you the.
And while I can't promise that we won't need the second budget meeting, I don't think we've ever used it so far.
My first year here, but we had the second one. So that was 2 years ago.
Did we?
But it's because we were doing the mill rate increase and there were some issues with that. So it ended up going into the second meeting. So
But it wasn't really about the budget.
it really wasn't about the budget. Yeah.
It was about the
Property tax levy.
increasing the levy. So we might need it, and we've talked about whether it would just give the committee more opportunity to talk about the budget stuff, but you know, mostly we don't really need to find more excuses. We'll see, but we haven't generally used it. Other questions or comments from the gallery or any? All right. Well,
Thank you.
this sort of concludes the budget part of this meeting. And if you don't feel like hanging around, you can leave if you'd like. We have two little items that are probably going to take about 5 or 10 minutes at the most. So we will proceed with that. Item 5 on the agenda is the first amendment to the contract for personal services for the interim director. And we have a recommendation that's gone to the board that the district legal counsel recommends the board vote to enter into this first amendment to the contract for personal services for the interim director. The purpose of the amendment is to assure the attorney-client privilege between legal counsel and the district extends to the interim, because our interim director is an independent contractor rather than an employee. We have to govern things by contract that we don't ordinarily with regular employees. So I would, and the text of the resolution is on the back page. And thank you all very much for coming.
Thank you.
So I would entertain a motion to approve this first amendment to the contract.
This is Marta. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Marta. I didn't see your hand up.
This is Marta, and I move that the JCLD board vote to amend and accept the first amendment to the JCLD contract for personal services for interim director to retain legal services for the district and act upon and receive advice from legal counsel for the district.
Thank you very much.
We
have a second.
All right, second that motion.
So Marta's made the motion to approve and Patty has seconded it. Is there any discussion? Can we have a roll call vote, please? Well, maybe I think we need one for this.
Susan Kiefer.
Aye.
Patty Jensen.
Aye.
Kevin Keating.
Kevin, did you leave?
I think we lost him.
All right.
Marta Teranthi.
Aye.
Marissa Shepherd.
She's not attending today. So it passes 3 in favor and no opposed. 3 is a quorum, so that is sufficient. Thank you very much. The motion carries. And then the one other thing that we need to do is we will be getting the report on the investigation of the talent incident that we asked HR answers for. And that has gone through the legal counsel's office. And we would like to keep that report protected by legal attorney-client privilege. So we are going to review that report in an executive session and have Jacqueline Bunick go through it with us. And then we will take whatever actions. I think she has the draft of the report now, but I haven't seen it, and I sent out to our board dates and times that we might schedule this meeting, and so hopefully we can set a meeting today if possible. But Kevin's gone and Marissa isn't here, so maybe we'll do this offline. Since I don't think we're going to be very successful in this meeting. All right. Anything else for the good of the order? Any comments, questions, items to raise?
Just a big thanks to the budget committee members. Without you, we could not do this. So thanks to everybody who stepped up and agreed to serve and who's present today.
Yep.
Thanks a lot.
Absolutely.
And thank you to everybody on the administrative team that is making it happen, and also the foundation.
All right. All right. I think we've concluded the agenda. I will adjourn the meeting.
Good job.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.